Hey there, guys. It is me, Countess, back with another video for all of you out there. Thank you for joining me. This is another installment of beautiful poetry from the talent show contest chapter in the Memoirs of Billy Shears by Tom U. Harriet. And today, guys, we're going to kind of take a trip back to the past. We're going to go back, and we're going to go back in 66. Yes. This poem starts on page 639. Note that numerology there. So you have 6 plus 3 is 9. 2 9s. And then you get 9 plus 9 is 18. 1 plus 8 goes back to 9. Very, very cool. It screams McCartney, and when I read that poem, The Hardest Things, a couple installments ago, that was very laced with McCartney vibes, I guess you could say. So just interesting, you know. This poem is kind of cool. It's got a lot of information in it. So stick with me and we'll see what it says. Okay, let's begin. He'd foretell his own fall back in 66. Now I retell for all back in 66. What befell me and Paul back in 66. What went well, you recall, back in 66. May repel great and small, back in 66. He'd indwell and enthrall, back in 66. To propel me to haul, back in 66. And outsell all them all, back in 66. Like some hell fireball, back in 66. His Michelle would just bawl, back in 66. She would smell my pitfall, back in 66. From her shell, her cat call, meow, back in 66. Would dispel every scrawl, back in 66. On my trail to forestall, back in 66. And compel with some gall, back in 66. My goodwill or rainfall, back in 66. When the bell hit the ball, back in 66. The hotel took the call, back in 66. From the dell came this doll, back in 66. I set sail, leaving Saul, back in 66. Across the well, over the wall, back in 66. And with Mel hit the mall, back in 66. It was a hell of a haul, back in 66. To pierce the veil and evolve, back in 66. Eyes impaled with old Paul, back in 66. So I yelled to y'all, back in 66. Can't you tell I'm too tall, back in 66. And I've wailed at this wall, back in 66. Since he fell in the fall, back in 66. As years flitter by and are gone, Though I've filled everyone with my songs, sometimes I'm a little bit miffed as I think of the life that I've missed. Looking back to what happened back then, or to when this new life was begun. Looking back in itself isn't wrong, but my years of now are all gone. He'd foretell his own fall back in 66. Now I retell for all back in 66. What befell me and Paul back in 66. What went well, you recall, back in 66. May repel great and small back in 66. Heed, indwell, and enthrall back in 66. To propel me to haul back in 66. And outsell them all back in 66. Like some hell fireball back in 66. His Michelle would cry, would just bawl back in 66. And out yell my hard ball back in 66. She would smell my pitfall back in 66. From her shell, her cat call, meow, back in 66. Would dispel every scrawl back in 66. On my trail to forestall back in 66. My goodwill or rainfall back in 66. When the bell hit the ball back in 66. The hotel took the call back in 66. From the dell came this doll back in 66. I set sail leaving Saul back in 66. Across the well, over the wall back in 66. And with Mel hit the mall back in 66. It was a hell of a haul back in 66. To pierce the veil and evolve back in 66. Eyes impaled with old Paul. Hey guys, it's me, just interrupting this really quick because I just wanted you guys to take note and question with me. Did you get that line? Eyes impaled old Paul. Does that have something to do with Billy's eye getting plucked out, impaled, or something? A play on words, as he loves to do. I don't know. Something to think about. Bye. Back in 66. So I yelled to y'all back in 66. Can't you tell I'm too tall? Back in 66. And I've waited and wailed at this wall back in 66. When Paul fell in the fall of 1966. Wow, that ended really, I love that wordplay too. Like the fall, on the wall, it's like the Humpty Dumpty that they talk about, that imagery, the Eggman. But also, Paul passed away in September. I see that when Paul fell in the fall of 1966, the season, I know the Brits call it autumn, you know, and we do too over here, but it's generally noted as fall, the season. So I like that. I like that wordplay. I like this poem, you know, it really does talk about the whole thing, you know, his coming together with Paul. Just, it all happened in this year, and there's just so much different stuff he talks about, you know, just foretelling his own fall. And, you know, I really like the break in the middle of the verses when he says, as the years flutter by and are gone, though I filled everyone with my song, sometimes I'm just a little bit miffed as I think of the life that I've missed, looking back to what happened back then, or to when this new life begun. Looking back in itself isn't wrong, but my years of the now are all gone. That like breaks my heart, you know, because you start thinking about the whole concept of him being born to be somebody on the world stage, you know, from the perspective of the death cult, if you will, that this is all attributed to, right? He was programmed, he was conditioned, he was traumatized, he was put through SRA, you know, ancient occult methods from the Germans, you know. It's all mind control. That's, you know, how they establish, they break the mind, and you have to, the person kind of like disassociates with their physical body and becomes somebody else to endure the situation that they're in. It's like it's actually like a biological response to trauma. The brain doesn't want to remember it, it just shuts down, and then that's how DID is been formed. So I feel it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? I feel very like sympathetic to Bill about his situation, because he wasn't born into free will, the free will that God intended for everybody to have. You can choose what you want to do on this earth. It's your choice. And in the end, if you believe, you'll have to just answer to it. You know, it's, yeah. And it's just really hard to not feel sad for Bill. From my, I don't know, I feel in my gut, you know, just like the shit that he went through when he was little. You know, he grew up, he had to totally detach from his family. Only a few people, he said, you know, knew about the switch. Otherwise, relatives had no idea where he went. You know, he just sort of disappeared. You know, for all they know, like, he got killed and was buried somewhere or something. He had to totally detach and become this entity of Paul. And he talks about again, merging with Paul and outselling them all, you know. What do you guys think about this poem? Again, it's hard. Again, the duality, the double-edged sword, right? I feel for Billy. I feel for him because he has never really had a choice. He is programmed to do what he's done in his life. And it's amazing what he's done in his life. I admire him. I admire him as an artist and as a musician. You know, I'm an artist and a musician myself, and you know, he's really accomplished a lot. And I'm, you know, I was classically trained in the piano. I can't really compose music. Otherwise, I would try to compose something with these songs, but I've never been really good at it. I've tried and tried, actually. I had to with my teacher. I went through 12 years of, you know, classes and lessons, and I'm very grateful for it because music is beautiful, and it's beautiful to have that knowledge. I just don't have the ability to like play by ear or even kind of play like contemporary music or rock music. I'm like programmed for classical music. Chopin is like my favorite to play. So moving and beautiful. Anyways, but I feel for Bill, and those verses in that poem just really hit me. So what do you guys think? Like, how do you feel towards the situation? I know it's like he comes and he's associated with the controllers of the world, the death cult, as the book says, you know. What do you guys think about this? Like, just let me know in the comments. You know, am I the only one who kind of feels bad for him and can see kind of what he's going through? Like, he had to just fantasize about what his life as William would have been. It's heartbreaking. You know, nobody should have to endure something like that, right? Something to think about, I guess. But anyways, guys, that is all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this poem. I did. It was nice, and it was kind of repetitious, right? Again, chanting. I was chanting, and I was chanting 66. Chanting the sixes all over the place. Ugh. I don't like that really that much, but I did it just for the video, so I hope you enjoyed it, guys. So until the next video, I will say adieu. Bye, guys.
But though they may be parted, there is still a chance, Bill.